Hey everybody, so yesterday we were in open mind mode and we read stage 1 of St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. And I get initially, it's a little weird. The basics of this first stage is the werewolf girls are moved from their home in the wild to St. Lucy's and their initial reactions to things. And today we're going to leave open mind mode and get into analysis mode. And really what we're going to be doing is being specific in labeling how we mentally interact with literature. And we're going to do this with the help of a reading journal. Now, in the past, I would give students the whole reading journal all at once, and we'd go through it piece by piece as class by class. But I'm concerned with it getting a little messy with figuring out what part of the story goes with what part of the journal. So I'm going to couple together the videos in whatever section of the journal we work with. Later on, you'll have to glue all the journals together. Electronically speaking, of course. So like I said in the past, it is important to stay organized. Make those folders. And in Schoolsview, one of the things I added was the beginning of your reading journal. Should look something like this. And this first page is the 7 reading comprehension strategies. And again, this is how we mentally interact with stories. To some degree, I think it's fair to compare this with learning how to, something athletic, hit a baseball. This is all going to be guesswork on my end. I've never actually played an organized sport. But it's my understanding that when you first start learning how to hit a ball, you have to be very cognizant. You have to be very aware of what your body is doing. How are you standing? How is your grip? How are your elbows? Keep your eye on the ball, and probably some other things, but I was never actually formally taught. And my guess would be, as time goes on, you think less and less of all those details and it just becomes kind of ingrained. That's exactly what we're hoping happens with you, your brain, and these reading strategies. Let's take a real quick look at them. First is determine importance. And I saw you guys do that kind of thing when you made those quizzes. You figured out what you thought was the most important part of that text. Another is visualizing. Now that's where you create that mental picture of what's happening in your head based on the words on the page. Another is questioning, and when you're questioning the text, you're mentally involved with the text, wondering what's going to happen next, possibly making predictions. Synthesize is where you take ideas from the text and some other idea over here, and you kind of see how they fit together, like with a central idea. Monitoring is another strategy. That's where you decide if you have to slow down, speed up, or back up a little bit. Like yesterday when we were talking about the difference between reading and just looking at words. But the two I want to focus on the most are inferring and connecting. Now, connecting is where you have some sort of personal connection with the text. And I only mean that in terms of, hey, this reminds me of when I'm familiar with this experience because and I'll model some of these for you. And the other one I really want to pay attention to in stage 1 is inferring, where you get an idea beyond what is just in the text. Now, I know this seems like a lot being thrown at you all at once, so I'm going to demonstrate a couple of the reading strategies, how to infer, how to connect with stage 1. I got the first few examples. I got you. Just watch what I do. But first, we're going to have a real quick reading of the text. Now, I tried taking the reading that you saw yesterday and just speeding it up, and that sounds horrible. So instead, I'm going to read this quickly. Now, buckle up. I've had a lot of coffee. And again, this is not the reading you want to hear if this is your first time hearing the story. This is a sped up, quick reminder reading of Stage 1. Ready? Let's go. St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves by Karen Russell. Stage 1, the initial period, is one in which everything is new, exciting, and interesting for your students. It is fun for your students to explore their new environment. That's from the Jesuit Handbook on Lycanthropic Culture Shock. At first, our pack was all hair and snarl and floor-thumping joy. We forgot the bark cautions of our mothers and fathers, all the promises we'd made to be civilized and ladylike, couth and kempt. We tore through the austere rooms, overturning dresser drawers, pawing through the neat piles of the Stage 3 girls' starched underwear, smashing light bulbs with our bare fists. Things felt less foreign in the dark. The dim bedroom was windowless and odorless. We remedied this by spraying exuberant yellow streams all over the bunks. We jumped from bunk to bunk, spraying. We nosed each other midair, our bodies buckling in kinetic laughter. The nuns watched us from the corner of the bedroom, their tiny faces pinched with displeasure. "Ay, caramba," Sister Maria de la Guardia sighed. "Que barbaridad!" She made the sign of the cross. Sister Maria came to St. Lucy's from a halfway house in Copacabana. In Copacabana, the girls are fat and languid and eat pink slivers of guava right out of your hand. Even at Stage 1, their pelts are silky, some bleached to near invisibility. Our pack was hirsute and sinewy and mostly brunette. We had terrible posture. We went knuckling along the wooden floors and the callous pads of our fists, bearing row after row of tiny wood-rotted teeth. Sister Josephine sucked in her breath. She removed the yellow wheel of floss from under her robes, looping it like a miniature lasso. "The girls at our facility are backwoods," Sister Josephine whispered to Sister Maria de la Guardia with a beatific smile. "You must be patient with them." I clamped down at her ankles, straining to close my jaws around the woolly extra large sock. Sister Josephine tasted like sweat and freckles. She smelled easy to kill. We'd arrived at St. Lucy's that morning, part of a pack 15 strong. We were accompanied by a mousy, nervous-smelling social worker, the baby-faced deacon, Bartholomew, the blue wolfhound, and 4 burly woodsmen. The deacon handed out some stale cupcakes and said a quick prayer. Then he led us through the woods. We ran past the wild apiary, past the felled oaks, until we could see the white steeple of St. Lucy's rising out of the forest. We stopped short at the edge of a muddy lake. Then the deacon took our brothers. Bartholomew helped him to herd the boys up the ramp of a small ferry. We girls ran along the shore, tearing on our new jumpers in a plaid agitation. Our brothers stood on the deck, looking small and confused. Our mothers and fathers were werewolves. They lived an outsider's existence in caves at the edge of the forest, threatened by frost and pitchforks. They had been ostracized by the local farmers for eating their sealed fruit pies and tearing the heifers. They had ostracized the local wolves by having sometimes thumbs and regrets, and human children. Their condition skips a generation. Our pack grew up in a green purgatory. We couldn't keep up with the purebred wolves, but we never stopped crawling. We spoke a slab-tongued pidgin in the cave, inflected with frequent howls. Our parents wanted something better for us. They wanted us to get braces, use towels, be fully bilingual. When the nuns showed up, our parents couldn't refuse their offer. The nuns, they said, would make us naturalized citizens of human society. We would go to St. Lucy's to study a better culture. We didn't know at the time that our parents were sending us away for good. Neither did they. That first afternoon, the nuns gave us free rein of the grounds. Everything was new, exciting, and interesting. A low granite wall surrounded St. Lucy's, the blue woods humming for miles behind it. There was a stone fountain full of delectable birds. There was a statue of St. Lucy. Her marble skin was colder than her mother's nose. Her pupilless eyes rolled heavenward. Doomed squirrels gambolled around her stony toes. Our diminished pack threw back our heads in a celebratory howl and exultant and terrible noise, even without a chorus of wolf brothers in the background. There were holes everywhere. We supplemented these holes by digging some of our own. We interred sticks in our itchy new jumpers in the bones of the friendly, unfortunate squirrels. Our nose ached beneath an invisible assault. Everything was smudged with a human odor, baking bread, petrol, the nun's fate woman smell sweating out beneath a dark perfume of tallow and incense. We smelled one another, too, with the same astounded fascination. Our own scent had become foreign in this strange place. We had just sprawled out in the sun for an afternoon nap, yawning in the warm dirt, when the nuns reappeared. They conferred in the shadow of the juniper tree, whispering and pointing. Then they started toward us. The oldest sister had spent the past hour twitching in her sleep, dreaming of fatty and infirm elk. The pack used to dream the same dreams back then, as naturally as we drank the same water and slept in the same red scree. When our oldest sister saw the nuns approaching, she instinctively bristled. It was an improvised bristle, given her new human limitations. She took clumps of her scraggly nut-brown hair and held it straight out from her head. Sister Maria gave her a brave smile. "And what is your name?" she asked. The oldest sister howled something awful and inarticulable, a distillate of hurt and paddock, half-forgotten hunts and eclipsed moons. Sister Maria nodded and scribbled on a yellow legal pad. She slapped on a name tag. "Hello, my name is Jeanette, it is." The rest of the pack ran in a loose, uncertain circle, torn between our instinct to help her and our new fear. We sensed some subtler danger afoot, written in a language we didn't understand. Our littlest sister had the quickest reflexes. She used her hand to flatten her ears to the side of her head. She backed towards the far corner of the garden, snarling in her most menacing register that an 8-year-old wolf girl can muster. Then she ran. It took them 2 hours to pin her down and tag her. "Hello, my name is Mirabella." "Stage 1, Sister Maria sighed, taking careful aim with her tranquilizer dart. "It can be a little overstimulating." All right, so that's a fast reading of Stage 1 that I could muster. Now let's take a look at the reading journal, the part that I've already filled in for you. On the left is always going to be what the text says. Now this can be quotes, this can be paraphrased ideas. With the examples that I'm going to give you, they are all quotes. Let's take a look at the first quote. The first quote is from the very, very beginning of Stage 1, from the Jesuit Handbook on Lycanthropic Culture Shock. We could expand on that quote. It comes from the very beginning, Stage 1. The initial period is one in which everything is new, exciting, and interesting for your students. It is fun for your students to explore their new environment, and that is from the Jesuit Handbook on Lycanthropic Culture Shock. And let's just start there. Now, on the right side of the reading journal is where I've included a couple examples of how to connect and infer. Now, in terms of a connection with me and this text, and look, some of these connections are going to be personal. We're not going to have the same connections to the text. Sometimes we will, and sometimes we won't. As you can see with what I wrote in the journal space, the Jesuits, I know who they are. They are an order of priests that have a good reputation for education. I went to Catholic schools from K through 12, and although I wasn't taught by Jesuits, the priests and nuns who taught me were very similar. Yep, I went to all Catholic schools my entire educational career from kindergarten through senior year of high school. I went to an all-boys Catholic high school called St. Francis, just outside of Buffalo. And you're probably wondering right away, what was it like to go to an all-boys high school? Well, it was certainly different than here. There were some pluses and there were some minuses. Let's start with the minuses. Yeah, it's I suppose for a teenage boy, one of the downsides of going to an all-boys school is that there are no girls at school. Does that make dating impossible? No. Like, you know how you guys know students that go to other schools other than Windsor? It's like that. But I suppose it did make it a little bit more difficult to find girls who I could trick into dating me. One of the pluses of going to an all-boys Catholic school was there's no girls. You know those days at school where, like in phys ed, you're playing a game that you really enjoy, so you really give it your all, and by the end of class, you're sweaty and disgusting, and I mean, you left the house, your hair looked good, but now you don't have that fine selection of products that you do have at home, and you look a little messy, and you smell a little messy, and at an all-boys Catholic school, nobody cares. And we didn't have a uniform. I went to schools like in middle school that had uniforms, but at St. Francis we had a dress code, which was you had to have a collared shirt and you had to have a tie. During most months, you had to wear either a sport jacket or a sweater, dress pants, dress shoes, and socks. We weren't allowed to have piercings. We weren't allowed to have our hair past the base of our collar. Basically what I'm saying is we had to dress rather conservatively. And that was my high school experience. The other entry I have in this is where I inferred Jesuits must have dealt with werewolf education enough to write a book about it. This excerpt from that book must be written to instruct the teachers of werewolves. I can infer just from the opening of the story that turning werewolves into more human being type beings it's been done. And the Jesuits might be kind of good at it. I mean, they wrote the book. Let's look at the second entry that I included. I grabbed the quote, "We tore through the austere rooms, overturning dresser drawers, pawing through the neat piles of the stage 3 girls' underwear. The dim bedroom was odorless. We remedied this by spraying exuberant yellow streams all over the bunk." And if you noticed, I condensed that quote a little bit with the triple dot system. More on that later. And on the right, I made another inference. I saw something that was beyond what is just there on the page, and I wrote, based on the title, it's a home, and the fact that the paragraph begins with "at first," I can tell that they are being brought to the dorms for the first time. The girls seem more like wild animals. Girls who have been at the school longer, those stage 3 girls, must act more proper than these girls based on the description of their rooms. And I'm talking about the neat piles of laundry that the stage 3 girls have, as opposed to the breaking light bulbs and peeing all over the place that the stage 1 girls are doing. And that's where I found my connection with that part of the text. And I wrote, "They're peeing all over the place. Ew. It's like when I take my dog on a walk. He has to first stop and pee on the tree in front of our house, then on the other trees and hydrants nearby. It's how he marks his territory. Girls are doing something similar." Personally, I also call that dog monopoly, where the goal is to pee on as many things as possible and mark as much territory as possible. It's like Monopoly. For my third entry, I chose the quote, "Ay caramba," Sister Marie de la Guardia sighed. "In Copacabana, the girls eat pink slivers of guava right out of your hand." And again, that's kind of a condensed quote. Let's see what I inferred from that passage. I inferred, with Spanish being spoken and the information given about Sister Marie de la Guardia, it seems like there are similar schools in other parts of the world, particularly in South America. And from this quote, we get information that there are other schools like St. Lucy's, who knows, maybe even around the globe, but definitely in Copacabana. And then I was able to connect, especially with that detail in Copacabana. And if you see what I wrote, I know that Copacabana is a section of Rio that has the famous beautiful beach. Eating guava and having sun-bleached hair, or in this case pelts, is in line with the resort area that it is. So this is Copacabana is in Rio. Rio is in Brazil. That is in South America, and it's a resort town. And based on the description of the wolf girls there, things are a little bit more laid back. And finally, in the group of ones that I'm taking care of and handing off to you, I grabbed "The girls at our facility are backwoods," Sister Josephine whispered. Sister Josephine tasted like sweat and freckles. She smelled easy to kill. First, I connected with this one, and I wrote, "I know that backwoods usually refers to people that are very much removed from society. I think there was a TV show called Mountain Men that tried to show how they lived." And just for the record, I don't really like reality TV that much, but I'm aware that this Mountain Men show existed, and these are guys who like preferred to live in the middle of nowhere, preferred to rely on themselves. And they were referred to as backwoods, so perhaps these girls come from a similar background. And I was able to infer from that last sentence, "She smelled easy to kill," that the girls are experienced hunters. I mean, what does easy to kill even smell like? So that takes us to the end of the first section of the reading journal, and maybe you're thinking, man, this is going to be the easiest reading journal I've ever had to keep. Mr. C seems to be happy to do all the work. Well, with the beginning of it, sure, I want to show you, what I'd like the reading journal to look like. So I gave you the first 2 pages today. First page has those 7 reading strategies, and the second has some demonstrations on how to infer and connect specific specifically with some excerpts from Stage 1 of St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. Tomorrow, I'll give you another section of the reading journal. And it's so important to keep it somewhere safe. I hope you've made those folders. You're going to want to keep the reading journals in the same folder, because eventually I'll want to see them. All right. In the past, I would lurk around. I'd go up and down the rows to see what people are putting in. I can't really do that now. So eventually I will ask you to submit your journal so I can take a look at it. So keep it somewhere safe. And as I give you more and more pieces, you might want to join them together. I can show you how to do that once we get in this a little bit deeper. For tomorrow's section of Reading Journal, you're going to meet me halfway. I've picked some quotes, and I have some kind of ideas on how to guide you towards some inferences and connections. And so tomorrow's going to be a little bit more work on your end. And then after we kind of split the work, then you'll be you won't be totally on your own. I'll have some prompts and some other things for you as we go along while we're reading the story. All right, I think that's about it for today. I didn't mind writing all that stuff in the journal. If you have questions about anything we talked about today, please feel free to ask either in person or through the Schoology messaging system. If you run into problems, if you're having tech problems, reach out. Don't forget, I'll do my best to figure out what's happening and help you along. Make sure you bring your analysis mode brains tomorrow when we do some more inferencing and connecting with some other parts of St. Lucy's Stage 1. See you tomorrow.